Ladies and gentlemen, Claudia Bokel.
Thank you, Jan, not only for mentioning the dark side, but also for mentioning Marco van Basten. I live in the Netherlands, and we have been speaking about football way too much. They did not qualify. So it's a real honor, but also a real pleasure to be here today. We are co-hosting this conference. Nevertheless, I think it's also important to speak a little bit about my experiences at the dark side, if you want to say so, as chair of the IOC Athletes Commission. But first of all, a little bit on a survey that we have done as FairSport, a FairSport survey on the Charter of Athletes' Rights. We conducted it over a 6-week span to determine athletes' opinion on their current rights and the environment of cheating within sport. They went from a range from the right to clean, fair sport, equality, transparency, justice, compensation, freedom of expression, etc. We had a significant amount of responses, over 2,100 athletes participating, a diverse demographic representing over 60 countries, 50 sports, 270 Paralympians, nearly an equal male-female split, ages from 14 to 73, with an average age of 27, and over 85% of these athletes performing at the international competition level, Olympics and Paralympics. And Article 8 of the World Anti-Doping Agency Code, the right to a fair hearing and notice of decision, speaks to the transparent process for doping allegations. However, key findings from this study suggest that over half of the athletes surveyed feel they do not have leadership free of corruption, coercion, and manipulation, causing a lack of trust amongst athletes for strict, transparent enforcement of all rules. 55% are unsure, feel they do not have the right to sport free of corruption, coercion, and manipulation. And 54% are unsure, feel they do not have leadership free from conflict of interest. The results from the survey demonstrate the need for an enhanced, transparent process in sport to restore the trust of these athletes in anti-doping organizations. And if I explain you a little bit about my story, where this is coming from, that's probably the best why I understand that this is the result of that survey. I was an athlete representative, about 15 years long, first at the German Fencing Federation, then at the German Olympic Committee, the European Olympic Committees, and eventually becoming a member of the Athletes Commission of the International Olympic Committee, before becoming the chair of the IOC Athletes Commission. I had a seat at the top table of all of those organizations. I had been told over the years before getting to the IOC that the ideas of me and my commissions were great, but it is the IOC that decides. So when I got that seat, with quite an election campaign in Beijing, I said to myself, now I have a chance to put into place all the ideas that the athletes have given me over the years and to really work on that, and that I would not make any concessions to that just because maybe, possibly, I could stay on the International Olympic Committee, even though obviously I enjoyed the perks of it as well. So what did I want to do? I wanted to support athletes' commissions around the world. I wanted them to be instated. I wanted them to be empowered. I wanted them to be able to speak up and to support them. I wanted to work on the fight against doping. And I wanted to support dual career transition. The three things over all those years. And this is, by the way, 10 years ago. And still, I think we have similar issues today. I started, by the way, at the WADA meetings with Athlete Friendly and just being able to use a mobile app to do your whereabouts, and people were always making fun of me. But eventually, I think that was important also before we got into the real issues when Hajo Seppelt came. At the International Olympic Committee, Hajo said it, he has a gold card of Lufthansa. I had 3 different airlines gold cards. There were years where I was 280 days on the road. Why was that? Not because I enjoyed traveling so much, but because I wanted to speak to the athletes. If I had a seat at that top table, I wanted the athletes to be able to voice their concerns and me to express it at the table. And probably I have made mistakes over those years due to naivety, but I more or less established a network of athletes and athletes commissions. There were certain organizations that did not want athletes at the top table. The IAAF, they didn't want an elected athlete on their board. FIFA, they don't have an athletes commission. They sent Van Basten. At least they sent somebody, but he's not a real current athlete anymore, I would say. Continental athletes forums were developed, and a lot was done on the field of career transition. And then, yes, we saw the ARD documentary by Hajo Seppelt. And an investigation was done into athletics in Russia. Why only athletics? Why only Russia? I don't know. Was it the lack of money? Was it really a lack of jurisdiction? And the outcomes, we know. It was worse than we thought. And then we were sitting there. Athletes were asking, if the IAAF was corrupt, why did we only look at Russia? And if athletics in Russia is corrupt, why did we only look at athletics? But it took time, it took a lot of time to push for those investigations. And not until Grigory Rodchenkov had spoken to the New York Times, it was that Professor McLaren was appointed to investigate Russia. We had heard of Brian Fogel, probably known to everyone here in the room, who seemed to have evidence through Rodchenkov, and we wanted to know for ourselves what was going on. We didn't know who to trust anymore on this, and Becky Scott, my counterpart at WADA Athlete Committee, and me from the IOC Athletes Commission, we wanted to be there. We had conference calls. I took them out of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, all former Soviet republics. And we knew that possibly somebody would listen to us. We didn't know, but we said, this is probably the most important thing that we will do as athlete representatives. So all I did, I was there by myself, I just double-locked my hotel room. And then we flew to Los Angeles. We heard Grigory Rodchenkov, we heard Professor McLaren, and we were obviously shocked. And for anyone who has not seen Icarus, or who has seen it, that's the scene where Becky and I look extremely shocked. That was when we flew to Los Angeles and heard it. And there I was, sitting at the IOC meetings and bringing up possible consequences. If that was all proven true, how should the IOC react? How should WADA react? What should be done? Well, we had to wait. We had to wait because we didn't know the results of it. So why think about possible consequences if we don't know what the result of the investigation will be? And I was told it was just me. Oh yes, and maybe Becky as well. So we said we have to use the network that I had established over all those years. And we should ask the athletes around the world, the athletes commissions around the world. So what is your opinion? What do you think? Should Russia be banned, yes or no, from the Olympics? And we had an overwhelming majority that, yes, Russia should be banned from Rio. I came back to the table at the IOC, and I was told that I could not go out and ask other athletes. How could I go outside of the IOC and discuss things like banning Russia from the Games? So it went from, on the one hand, it was just my opinion, and maybe Becky's, to, but you cannot ask others. What was I to do? In the meantime, Becky was bullied by an IOC member. He was later arrested during the Rio Games, and I was bullied internally. I thought, if I keep this internally, we may have a chance to put it through. Well, we didn't. We didn't because the next time I came to the table, but we have letters from other athletes commission, and they sent to us letters that they don't agree with your opinion. They agree the IOC opinion, and it's probably just a coincidence that the people who wrote, most of the people who wrote those letters were candidates for the IOC Athletes Commission in Rio. Finally, Professor McLaren presented the report, and I thought, okay, now we are going to discuss this, right? But in the meantime, public opinion was shaped. It was not anymore about the system of state doping or state-sponsored or systematic doping. It was about the individual athletes. That was not what you had looked into. You looked at the system. So we had to make a commission that would look into the individual athletes coming out of the federations. And I had brought up, by the way, the International Boxing Federation at a certain point as well, that had not done any out-of-competition testing. So we said that should not be right as well. And the reaction was, but the international federations, they are doing it very well. So we're giving it back to the international federations. Well, we've heard a few examples that they did not do it well. So commissions were made. The international federations could propose athletes. A CAS arbitrator should look at it. And then I was part of a group of 3 who should then look if procedurally everything was fine. Well, yeah, procedurally, yes. Content-wise, I don't know. I did not have the right ways and means to check the content of that. Professor McLaren, you were asked to look into the individual athletes, so another investigation, and Schmid and Oswald had commissions, still following how many commissions there have been to look at it. Well, for me, my term ended there in Rio. That was the last thing, more or less, that I did. And what happened since? A similar situation happened in Pyeongchang. Well, at least the Russian Olympic Committee was banned for the duration of the Games, plus a day, more or less. WADA and IOC Athletes Commission have since clashed. Russia has not fulfilled the roadmap. Athletes Germany have created an independent athletes commission. Why did they do that? Because they listened to my experience. They said, we cannot do all the work just by ourselves. We are a group of volunteers, true volunteers. We need support. And we can't use the support coming out of the system if we want to give our opinions to the system. So if we have a lawyer from the National Olympic Committee, how can we then sit on the board of the National Olympic Committee and give our opinion there? And they needed manpower, of course, to keep up with the sports politics. We don't know the outcome of the Governance Review Committee. Can we hope for the best? Vitaly Mutko and Sepp Blatter, I just read it, they are enjoying the FIFA World Cup, whilst Becky Scott is not even an official member of WADA Executive Committee. Icarus won an Oscar, but Grigory Rodchenkov is still fearing for his life. And the sheer fact of the amount of work that Gunther Younger, FairSport, the Athletes Integrity Unit, investigative journalists, and every one of us have shows that we are not there yet. So should we trust that the sport organizations are doing everything? They make some steps, of course, but summer athletes who are now going into the next season, they are the ones starting with their Olympic qualifications for Tokyo. They can't wait. And can they really wait for justice 10 years later? There are still athletes that will never get the justice, like the 28 athletes who received their medals back. The ones behind them, they will never get the medals. And even if they would, they have missed out of their moments of fame, the money they had. We can't wait for that. So don't the athletes deserve a full review of what went well, what went wrong, and what can be done better, instead of just hoping everyone will have learned from what happened, whilst we also know, and I'm quoting the beginning again, whilst we also know that 55% of athletes are unsure, feel they do not have the right to sport free of corruption, coercion, and manipulation, and 54% are unsure, feel they do not have leadership free from conflict of interest. Thank you.